You are listening to LawWithDenise.net, the best law podcast for A-level, undergraduate, GDL, and master's law students. Your host is Denise, your experienced law teacher sharing knowledge on various areas of law, including contract, tort, the English legal system, and criminal law. Understand the law better and learn the skills you need to get the grades you need.
My name is Denise, and you are listening to episode 002. In this episode, we are looking at the facts of the Donoghue and Stevenson case, and we are also discussing what the law was before the House of Lords passed their significant decision in this case in 1932. So, what exactly happened? How did this all end up in the courts? The drama starts in August 1928, when Mrs. Donoghue goes to a cafe with a friend of hers, and her friend orders and pays for an ice cream ginger beer float. Now, an ice cream ginger beer float includes some ice cream and some ginger beer. And normally the ginger beer is poured out first, and then the ice cream is put on top of it, so that the ice cream then floats, hence ginger beer float. Now, Mrs. Donoghue had some of this ice cream ginger beer float, and there was some ginger beer left in the ginger beer bottle. Her friend then decided to pour the remaining ginger beer into a glass. Now, because the glass was opaque, nobody suspected anything because you couldn't see into the bottle. But when her friend started to pour the remaining ginger beer into a glass, Mrs. Donoghue noticed a partially decomposed snail leaving the bottle. Unfortunately, Mrs. Donoghue became ill after this incident. She became physically ill, and she also suffered psychiatric injury. And the following year, in April 1929, she starts a case. And she starts her case against a Mr. Stevenson. Now, who is Mr. Stevenson? Mr. Stevenson is a manufacturer of the ginger beer. And when Mrs. Donoghue starts a case on April 9th, 1929, it seems as though the case is going nowhere. And that is because the law is against Mrs. Donoghue in 1929. As a consumer, the law requires that the consumer has a contractual relationship with the defendant that you're starting your case against. So, for example, Mrs. Donoghue could not start a case against the cafe owner. Why? She didn't have a contractual relationship with the cafe owner because she didn't purchase the ginger beer. Nor could she start a case against the manufacturer because she didn't have a contractual relationship with him either. But she does put in a case. She does start her case on April 9th, 1929. Remember, I said she didn't have a contractual relationship, so that was holding her back. But there are two other special categories that perhaps Mrs. Donoghue, someone like Mrs. Donoghue as a consumer, could have started a case under. And those special categories were as follows. They were that either the product in question was dangerous in itself, or that the defendant fraudulently misrepresented the product to Mrs. Donoghue. So, is Mrs. Donoghue's case looking any stronger? Not really. The ginger beer itself is not dangerous. So, does she have a case against Mrs. Stevenson? Not sure. And did Mrs. Stevenson fraudulently misrepresent the ginger beer to her? There is no evidence of that. So, as the law stood in 1929, it seemed as though Mrs. Donoghue had a very, very weak case, or no case at all. So let me recap. Remember, in 1929, someone like Mrs. Donoghue, a consumer, if they wanted to sue a manufacturer, in this case it's Mr. Stevenson, they had to demonstrate the following. 1, did you have a contractual relationship with the manufacturer? Mrs. Donoghue didn't. And then 2, was the product itself dangerous? In Mrs. Donoghue's case, it wasn't. Or was the product fraudulently misrepresented to you, the consumer? In Mrs. Donoghue's case, it wasn't. So, How did Mrs. Donoghue's case play out in the courts? What did the House of Lords say to Mrs. Donoghue in 1932? If you want to find out more, listen to episode 003. And in that episode, I will be explaining exactly what the House of Lords said in response to Mrs. Donoghue's case. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to LawWithDenise.net, the best law podcast for A-level, undergraduate, GDL, and master's law students. Your experienced law teachers sharing knowledge on various areas of law, including contract, tort, the English legal system, and criminal law. If you like the content, please remember to like, share, and comment. Thank you.